I want to talk about this because it seems nobody can figure this out. This is a riddle. This is from Vera Van Horn on Twitter, who I think she's a follower of mine, or she might be a patron. But John Bolton is a kind of bureaucratic tapeworm that keeps causing pain and suffering, but never suffering himself. Says Tucker Carlson. This is Tucker Carlson of Fox News, and nobody can figure it out because he's seemingly the the only person in America on mainstream TV or with any sort of massive platform, I mean really massive, corporate massive, who will tell the truth about war. Look at this. I'm going to stop and start this. I can't play it all the way through, you know, without stopping and starting it, but just listen to this by Tucker Carlson. This is astounding. It's astounding.
But just my view.
It's your long experience in foreign policy, I know.
Better record than yours, I would say. Got that? Hillary Clinton's toppling of the Libyan government was not a disaster, says John Bolton. Keep in mind there are literally slave markets operating in the streets of Tripoli right now.
Slave markets operating in the streets of Tripoli. Basically, he's right there. The slave trade in Libya. Libya was was the richest country in Africa when Gaddafi was toppled. Remember, Hillary Clinton said, "We came, he saw, he died, haha," and laughed about him being killed with a, you know, as a bayonet was shoved up his rectum. There's slave markets there now in Libya. Slave markets, richest country in Africa. Topple the dictator, the bad guy Gaddafi, slave markets there a few years later. You know, it's ironic when the CIA were throwing around ways of maybe trying to get rid of Gaddafi back in the early 80s, as long as the early 80s with Bill Casey. Bill Casey, when he became CIA director under Ronald Reagan, he was already under investigation for an attempted off-the-books coup in Libya, where, get this, he was trying to make out that Gaddafi was involved in the slave trade. And now, ironically, they get rid of Gaddafi and the slave trade is back there. That will never get shown on CNN and MSNBC. They won't talk about that. Tucker Carlson just did. What the fuck?
No problem, though. Bolton's fine with that. He's fine with the outcome in Iraq, too. That wasn't a disaster either. According to John Bolton, it was a raging success. We killed hundreds of thousands of people, lost thousands of our own troops, spent more than $1 trillion, all to eliminate a WMD threat that, despite John Bolton's assurances, never existed in the first place. Bolton is glad we did all that.
Let me just... So Jeremy Hunt, let me show you. So Jeremy Hunt, who, remember, he said that he was okay. Britain would consider joining the United States military assault on Iran. He is basically going on the coattails of that guy over there with a big moustache, John Bolton, the biggest warmonger on the planet, basically. Are any of our media going, Jeremy, what the fuck is the matter with you? Seriously, I'm asking. I bet you they're not. I bet you're not bringing this up. I bet you none of the media have asked Jeremy Hunt or Boris Johnson, any of them. I bet you not. They haven't asked him about Elliot Abrams when they were talking about Iran. They haven't asked about the history of Elliot Abrams, this guy that Trump has put in, and with Venezuela, his history with South America, and John Bolton and Pompeo. They're the war hawks. But then, you know, the media are doing their job. I'll continue playing this.
Really happy about it. That's demented. Normal people don't talk like that. There's nothing normal about John Bolton. Check out this piece of tape, recently uncovered, in which Bolton promises that we're going to overthrow the government of Iran. Keep in mind that this was filmed long before the Iranians shot down a single drone.
I have said for over 10 years since coming to these events that the declared policy of the United States of America should be the overthrow of the mullah's regime in Tehran. And that's why before 2019, we here will celebrate in Tehran. Thank you very much.
It's 2 years ago. He's talking about overthrowing Iran 2 years ago. You know, is it any wonder? Is it any wonder that you see stuff like that? Is it any wonder you see stuff like that on YouTube, on Twitter rather? Iran is going to attack us, even if we have to do it ourselves. Come on, anybody with open eyes can see this is a warmonger trying desperately to get his country to war with another country. Doesn't matter if he's lying about it. And they do lie every single time, like I say, into war. Lusitania, and then you go back to the Gulf of Tonkin, and then you incubate the babies, then the weapons of mass destruction. Every time.
In other words, last night has been in the works for years. John Bolton is a kind of bureaucratic tapeworm. Try as you might, you can't expel him. He seems to live forever in the bowels of the federal agencies, periodically re-emerging to cause pain and suffering, but critically somehow never suffering himself. His life really is Washington in a nutshell. Blunder into obvious catastrophes again and again, refuse to admit blame, and then demand more of the same. That's the John Bolton life cycle. In between administration jobs are always cushy think tank posts, paid speaking gigs, cable news contracts. War may be a disaster for America, but for John Bolton and his fellow neocons, it is always good business.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but why don't our journalists over here, why aren't they more like Tucker Carlson when it comes to Iran? How is he allowed to do that? Seriously, other people have asked this question, and lots of people in independent media, we can't get our heads around it. What is going on? How come Tucker Carlson is the person who is talking the truth when it comes to foreign policy with the United States? And war especially. You know. We know he's got, you know, we know Trump's got his ear. We also know, by the way, that he's got the ear of Trump, look. This is in the New York Times. Urged to launch an attack, Trump listened to skeptics who said it would be a costly mistake, they said. Washington. He heard Trump, this is him calling off the strike against Iran. Remember, he had some strikes against some low-grade military targets, and they was going to go ahead, apparently. We don't know for sure. Obviously, this is in the New York Times. It might all be bullshit. But Washington. Trump heard from his generals and his diplomats. Lawmakers weighed in, and so did his advisors. But among the voices that rang powerfully for President Trump was that of one of his favourite Fox News hosts, Tucker Carlson. Did Tucker Carlson just stop World War III? While national security advisors were urging a military strike against Iran, Mr. Carlson in recent days told Mr. Trump that responding to Tehran's provocations... Tehran's provocations, yeah. Look how close, you've seen the meme, look how close they put their country to all our bases. Anyway, Trump's provocations with force was crazy. The Hawks did not have the president's best interest at heart, he said, and if Trump had gone into war with Iran, then he could kiss his chances of re-election goodbye. Yeah, absolutely, he could. Remember, Trump is on the campaign trail was very anti-interventionist, and I think I'm right in saying he's the first president so far since President Carter, I think, who hasn't started a war. And Carter was in, what, 79? He left? But the point is, as Tucker Carlson being the guy that stopped World War III and war with Iran. It looks like if Jeremy Hunt's Prime Minister, he would go in with them. Who knows what Boris would do. We don't know what happened here, though, because it was in the New York Times. We don't know whether what Tucker said to Trump. We don't know what anybody said to Trump. We don't know. It's in the New York Times. We can't trust them. We can't trust them. But whatever the reason for Trump doing a U-turn, if he did do a U-turn on those strikes, and if he did give the go-ahead for them and then come double back and say no, or whether these strikes were going to go ahead and he put the stop on it, whatever happened, if Tucker Carlson did stop these attacks on Bolton, did it, thank you. I'm betting a hell of a lot of other journalists in America especially would not have tried to talk him out of it. And that's really, really scary if you think about it, isn't it?